All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Jerry Merkins. With me soon will be Cody Swan, CEO of Gunner Technology. His Mac just crashed, so he's currently rebooting it and getting everything set back up. So he'll be with us shortly. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go through all the intro stuff and get that out of the way while he's rebooting his Mac. The winner of the Country Store giveaway, and this is actually interesting. I was wondering how many cities have this characteristic that they have the name of a state. But Stuart J from Indiana, Pennsylvania is the winner of the Country Store giveaway this week. Country Store is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. Visit them at countrystoreoutfitters.com and make sure to sign up for our Country Store giveaway on our Facebook page. So Stuart J, you've got a Country Store hat and copies of our ebooks coming your way. So keep an eye out for those. And everyone else, make sure to go to our Facebook page and sign up for the Country Store giveaway. And while you're there, answer the question of the week, which Cody has the stats on the question of the week. So we're going to have to wait for Cody for the results of last week's question of the week and also for what the next question of the week will be. But definitely hop on our Facebook page and sign up for the Country Store giveaway and answer those questions of the week. The topic for today is actually a really interesting one. And it's actually the title of this, so I should know it offhand. The question is, what are the biggest lessons you've learned in your career? So this would be our careers in software development. I actually listed a whole bunch of them. So I'm wondering what Cody had and how much overlap there is. But the first one I had was learning how to fail. So when you're working in software development, you're going to fail constantly. It's kind of the nature of the beast that you're going to be learning so much and you're going to be learning constantly that you're going to be constantly confronted with problems that you don't know how to solve. And in your attempts to solve them, more oftentimes than not, you're going to fall flat on your face. So I was trying to think too of some really good examples of where we just failed miserably. One really good example is from our time at ESPN. We worked on ESPN's first social network for sports, which turned out to be a major flop, but that's a totally different story. But it was called Fan Profiles. And it was really cool because we were the community group in Los Angeles was me, Cody, George Meir, and Ed Davis at the time. And we had not outsourced, but we had partnered with a development shop that was based out of Santa Barbara, California, called ELC. And I think they're called something else now, but I can't remember the name. But we had been working with them for, like a year and a half, maybe, getting this product ready to launch. And, we had a couple weeks of testing, a couple weeks of planning the actual launch of the site, because there's actually integration points with ESPN proper. Let me just check back in with Cody to see if he's dying. Okay, cool. So the question, well, I'll let him talk about the questions when he comes back. But anyway, so we had a couple weeks of preparation for the launch, and we launched the site. We had just worked an ungodly amount of hours leading up to the launch, and it was Friday night. We were launching on Friday so that if anything went horribly wrong, we'd have the weekend to fix it, and hopefully traffic would be lower than it would be on a weekday, because most of the traffic, I think, to ESPN went the regular 9 to 5 Monday through Friday because people were surfing ESPN instead of doing work. So it was Friday night. We flipped the switch to launch the site, and immediately all hell broke loose. The app continually crashed. We'd immediately relaunch it or reboot it or respin up the servers, try again, and it would crash 10, 15 minutes later. And we literally could not keep the site up. So this is Friday at 5, and we were basically in the ESPN office. We were in Tower Burbank at the time, top floor Tower Burbank, which was terrifying. We were in the office from, 9 a.m. on Friday until somewhere around 9 a.m. on Monday morning. And the entire weekend was spent trying to figure out why the hell the site wouldn't stay up. And as it turns out, there's different environments that you can run a site in. So if you run a site in development mode, you're going to get a lot more logging. You're not going to cache stuff, because you don't want to cache requests when you're in development mode, because you want to see changes immediately. You don't want to, if you're updating a page, you don't want that page to be cached. you want that page to show the changes that you just made. So as it turns out, we were caching nothing and running a production server in development mode, um, which meant that the site continually crashed over and over and over and over again. So it took us, and it wasn't even us. It was actually we sort of had an all hands on deck, and there was a guy at ELC who snooped through the configuration files and discovered that we were running a production server in development. Uh, but we failed miserably at that. But the good thing about failing miserably with technology is that you learn and you don't make that same mistake again. I don't launch a site, a live site in development mode. And there's all kinds of examples of that as you're working in software development. You're constantly, I like to call it building your toolbox, because you're constantly learning new techniques and new languages and new ways of doing things, but you're also learning ways not to do things and how to not make the same mistake twice. Uh, so that's one of the first great lessons that you learn from software development, is learning how to fail, and it's actually applicable to your real life, because failure becomes less of a big deal the more you fail. I think that's something people don't really realize, and it's one of the main reasons why people don't take risks, is that they're terrified of failing and publicly failing. But the reality of the situation is you have to fail to not fail in the same way in the future, because you're still going to fail in the future, but you're going to fail in better ways, if that makes sense. That's one lesson I learned. Cody's Mac might be on fire right now, so it might just be me this podcast. We have to quit early too, because uh, we have a meeting at 10:30. No, we have a meeting at 11, but Cody needs to leave at 10:25 or something like that. So blame Cody for this solo episode of the live stream. Okay. Second great lesson that you learn from software development is you learn how to take criticism. The reality of the situation when you're writing code is it's going to work or it's not going to work. So there's no way to fake that. And when your code doesn't work, you need to be able to handle the feedback that you get in sort of a productive way. You can't really go on the defensive and shut down and try and say, well, this way is better, even when it's objectively not. You need to be open to new and better ways of doing things, because there's always people who know more than you do in the technology realm, unless you're someone like John Resnick, who knows absolutely everything about JavaScript and who probably I'm not sure who could tell him a better way to do something. But for us normies, us plebes, you're going to constantly be confronted by feedback and criticism, and you need to be open to that, because even if it's aggressive, even if it's sort of uh, ripping your code apart, at the end of the day, you're going to be better for it. You're going to write better code. You're going to learn better ways to do things. And you're going to be a better developer, which is really what it's all about. Because we were just talking about this, but software development, the technology landscape is constantly changing. So you can't really just say, well, this is how I'm doing it for the next 30 years. This is the language I know. This is what I know how to do in the language. I'm just gonna write, Java. I learned Java in 1992. It was perfect. I'm not gonna upgrade Java first off, because it's gonna break stuff. So I'm gonna stick with that. And for the next 40 years, I'm gonna retire in 2032 as a 40-year veteran of Java development. It doesn't work that way. It actually doesn't even work that way for, I'm going to do it this way for the next couple of years. Or even, it's almost gotten to the point where I'm going to do it this way for the next year. Stuff changes so rapidly. And the new technologies that are introduced are, in actuality, that much better than the technology that you're currently using. They're vastly superior. They take advantage of the new hardware changes that have been made, that you can't just put your foot down and say, I'm done learning. This is it. I'm done. I'm this is the development I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. Uh, and when you learn new stuff and when you try new things, not only are you gonna fail, but there are going to be people who know a lot more about it than you do, and you have to sort of like be that empty cup, like Zen folks talk about, where you can receive the feedback and criticism, not in a antagonistic way, where you're sort of uh, arms crossed receiving the criticism. You have to be arms wide open. That's the lamest thing I've ever said. But you have to receive the criticism in a positive way, and assume that they're trying to help you become a better developer, not trying to denigrate you as some terrible software developer. And Cody's here.
Which most software. Then here I am. Speaking of terrible software developers.
The perfect segue to Cody's arrival.
How does my mic sound? Am I on the? Does it sound?
Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, man, that is what we call engineering on site right there. That was interesting.
How's your Mac doing? Is it all right?
It's Mac-tastic.
Spectacular.
Macintoshtic.
Sounds somewhat like autistic. Macintoshtic.
Oh, speaking of that, can we just stop for a second? Because this is a great segue into what you're talking about. So, you've given up on Reddit. I still have this like masochistic, not obsession, but enjoyment.
Masochistic.
Max. We bring Max, our old friend, to play planning poker on Reddit. But no, so there is I go because there's actually really good stuff about like React Native and React and some of the stuff we do. So I contribute, and someone posted something about serverless architectures and how you can't assume that they're just going to auto scale, because a lot of things can go wrong, is what the person said, and then proceeded to list one thing, which is actually like, if you know serverless on AWS at all, it's not even an issue. So he wanted to, it was basically a pitch for you to hire his company to figure out why your serverless app isn't scaling. And so I jumped in. It wasn't even this guy who responded to me. I jumped in. I said, well, from your scenario, it was very clear that there was only one point that wouldn't scale, and that's by design with AWS. You don't need to load test that. You just need to change the setting. And so someone replied, well, non-serverless components still need to be tested for scalability. And I replied, well, then you're not using a serverless application, though.
Right.
And he replied, by definition, his reply was, don't be autistic.
Okay.
So that was
sort of like /end thread there.
Yes, exactly.
You really don't need to go much further than that.
Nope.
Well, let's spin back now that you're here. You have last week's question of the week and this week's question of the week. So run through those real quick, and then we'll jump back into lessons learned. I can tell you what lessons I've learned, and we can go from there.
Well, last week was kind of a misfire because I had to post on Twitter, and now I can't find it. And I don't know if I accidentally deleted it or never saved it or posted it and I was offline. It never synced when I got back online, but it's gone. It's so 0% voted on this poll, or maybe a lot of percent voted. You just never know. But I cannot find it for the life of me.
Okay. I think we had an alternate question last week, which was, do you have a good science book to send me?
That's right. That's right.
So I guess we'll never know too on that one.
Still taking write-ins. This week, so I'm getting away from Twitter again and going back to Facebook for the question of the week. So this week is relevant to the discussion we were having about training as a software developer and having like a ongoing education program and a roadmap for learning. So it's, do you read books? Because as we were talking, some of the best things that you actually get are just hard copy books that you can just take with you and read. And then later put into practice what you're learning. So I was curious to know if what the percentage of people who read books, who still read books, are.
I think all I do is read books. And what's actually really interesting too is I was trying to think how much of my day is actually just spent reading, because you're reading
code,
blog posts, you're reading code, you're reading answers to questions, or you're reading books, whether it's software related or not. And I honestly think I read like 6 or 7 hours a day. It's just constant reading.
I'm not that high, but yeah, I mean, I love reading, and it's just weird because you hear people, and most people say I haven't read a book since college, and it's just like you do like the Stewie Griffin head turn. You're like,
Really? Like, what do you do? Okay, so the topic this week is what lessons have you learned from software development? And I've talked about learning how to fail, and I talked about our launch of fan profiles at ESPN. And I've talked about learning how to take criticism. I have a couple more, but why don't you talk about one of the lessons you've learned from software development?
uh, yeah. So I've learned that I've learned a lot of things, but I'll say I learned that it's uh, so much better to kind of fail quickly. And I don't just mean that like fail fast ethos for, entrepreneurs, but I mean like do little things. Like don't assume anything is going to work. You know what I mean? So basically, don't lay out this elaborate program and just assume all the little steps are going to work along the way. Like it seems monotonous, but do something, see if it works. Do
Yeah,
something,
which
see if it works.
which is interesting too, because that's so applicable to day-to-day lives. I mean, what's interesting about learning how to fail and learning how to take criticism is that you end up applying it to your daily life. I mean, and like you're saying, breaking stuff into small projects, like you don't take on monumental tasks. You learn to sort of just take little bits at a time and fail fast and see what works and see what doesn't. And it honestly just it improves not only your code, but it improves everything outside of writing code.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, incremental steps. I mean, this goes back to the whole thing about, and this is interesting because I was thinking about this because in my experience, people with CS degrees are like they go for a while. They're like, okay, this is going to work because this, in theory, is how this should work. So I'm going to build a lot of stuff, and then it's just going to work. And then I've noticed people without CS degree, and I'm not being carte blanche, but they don't assume anything. They're not just like, all right, because I have a black box function here and object oriented here, like they don't assume anything. And it just kind of, I was thinking about the other day as it came up in another discussion with one of our employees, but I think that's interesting as well.
Because
Definitely something
they learn in the school of hard knocks. They just assume that stuff isn't going to work.
yeah, or they're just like, yeah. I mean, I think it's actually the other way around. Is that like when you're educated on something, you kind of like, all right, I have a grip on this. I'm doing this the academic way, so it should work. And what
Right,
we
right,
talked
right.
about in previous shows is like, there's a
Theory
lot.
versus practice.
Yeah, there's a big difference. There's a big difference. Yeah, I've also learned that like people suck at communicating in general. From the whole back and forth with bugs and defects and feature requests, like uh, and my point is, whenever you're dealing with a client, show them what it is. Like, take that 30 seconds to make a screencast. Otherwise, like tensions escalate because you're like, "We did it," and they're like, "No, you didn't," and we're like, "No, we did it," and they're like, "No, you didn't." And usually, it's something stupid, like they have like the default font size on their computer raised up so something looks way different on their machine than yours. I mean, it's just like take the time to show them what you are seeing, because the communication just is just terrible in this back and forth. And I think a lot of that is because people feel rushed and everything. And then the last thing I can think off the top of my head that I've learned and that I'm still trying to learn is that like I'm a very calm person. I don't get very rattled at anything, but I do get
Except for Florida football.
that's right. That's right. And I get extremely frustrated when I can't figure something out. Like extremely frustrated, like throw something at the wall frustrated. And I need to learn that like and it's weird because I think I'm have emotional intelligence, but I need to learn like to not try to do other things when I'm in that state of mind. That's what I need to, because everything falls apart when I get in that extremely frustrated. Like I've been working at this for 4 hours. There's no reason why this shouldn't work. It's just not working, and there's no reason for it. I just my blood boils.
And it bleeds over to your non-work life. You're
Yeah,
just in a
exactly.
negative headspace.
Yeah, and I'm
in
like,
general.
I'm snippy, and
Yeah.
you know, it's just not me. It's just not me at all, and it's not at all a good thing, and there's no excuse for it. You can't just be like, oh well, I'm frustrated, so I'm treating you like a piece of trash. You know,
Right,
like
right, right.
y-
A- a- It is interesting too because it does. That is something too, is that you sort of you have an awareness of what mental state you're in. You start sort of appreciating uh, what kind of work you'll be able to do based on what mental state you're in, and also like you're talking about what you probably shouldn't do while you're in that mental state, which is like interact with somebody
exactly,
who needs help with
exactly.
something.
And the thing is, it's kind of like a reverse situation, because when you're that frustrated and stuff is piling up, it makes you more frustrated. So you just want to take care of that stuff really quickly, but you shouldn't. Like you just shouldn't. You should just leave it. And like the other like I kind of get like a nervous tick if I see unread emails start piling up. And either yesterday, I think it was 2 days ago, I was in the weeds with something, and like I hazard to look at my email, and I had 40 unread emails, and I almost like just wanted to like
It's the worst.
I almost like there was like, is this life worth it? There was like a
A
gleaming,
serious existential crisis.
yeah. And I think I did that thing where in from like there's something about Mary where he's like, well, until 5 minute ad comes along, and the guy's like, no, not 5, 6 minute ad. I think I was like, if I was Mark Zuckerberg, I would have blown a fuse in my artificial intelligent brain.
Yeah, exactly. Sparks would have been flying out of your neck. Um, well, I know actually, and you have to go, right?
Yeah, I got to take off for a meeting. I got a small trek to make. So this is where I will bid you adieu.
Besides, it's not a bad place to leave it, honestly. We covered a bunch of stuff: learning how to fail, learning how to take criticism, learning about your mental state, learning how to communicate with people, and learning that people are in general bad at communication. Um, yeah, I think that covers a pretty solid ground of what you learn from software development. And like I said, you end up applying it to your daily life, and it actually it sort of makes everything better, or it can. So I guess we'll leave it there for this week's episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Make sure to check us out next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, when we won't be time pressed and our computers won't explode. Make sure to check out our blog at gunnertech.com. Head over to Facebook and sign up for the Country Giveaway. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. And answer our question of the week, which, remind them again, Cody, what that is.
Do you read books?
And if you don't, what is wrong with you? And look for our ebooks on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, iBooks, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. We will see you then. Take care.